Hey everybody, new project today. My old Craftsman mower has given me some trouble. It's got a Briggs and Stratton vertical shaft 11 horse engine on it. It's a, It's a 253 series, 253-707. And looks like I got to work on carburetor. I had a lot of trouble yesterday getting it started. It was like it was flooded. And it took a lot of starting fluid and jumper on the battery, and finally got it to run, but it wasn't running too good. And now as I take a closer look, I think I got gasoline in the oil. It looks like probably the carburetor needle and seat is seeping. And this will be my second one of these in 6 months. Last time it was my Tecumseh snowblower. And both of these motors probably got the same batch of gasoline, so perhaps there's something related there. But in any case, I'm going to pull the carburetor apart and see what I can find. If it's leaking, which it seems to be, typically that's flooding, and typically flooding means you got a needle and seat problem. And so I'm prepared to take it apart, pull the float bowl apart, and replace the needle and seat. That's the goal. It's a little fun sometimes getting these carburetors off and apart, and the snowblower I was able to flip upside down so I could do the needle and seat without taking the carb off. This one, being a lawn tractor, that isn't going to work. So I'm going to have to remove the carburetor so I can flip it upside down to set the float level when I put the new needle and seat in. The first thing you got to do is deal with fuel. I'm going to put a catch bucket underneath here, just in case. And just to catch any spills. And, starting off, I'm working with fuel. There's safety issues. You don't want to burn yourself. You don't want to have a fire. You don't want to burn your house and garage down. So you got to be very careful dealing with gasoline. The book says they want you to drain the whole tank and not plug the fuel line off. It's probably the best advice. Get the hose off the carburetor, pull the air filter off. I haven't cleaned this air filter in a while. It may be, this has one of these foam ones. There are instructions on the side. Clean it out with detergent and soak it in oil. I may need to do that before I put it back together, just for. See the gasoline out of there? It's very definitely seeping, because when I pulled the air cleaner off, I got a puddle. And so just from an understanding standpoint, what happens here is if the needle and seat are leaking, it's gravity fed fuel. The fuel will fill a float bowl. It will come up higher until it gets in here into the horizontal portion of the carburetor, and there it couldn't get out because of the screw. So it'll go back into the engine and it'll go into the cylinders, and as I said, it'll end up in the oil. It'll follow the spark plug up, and so it won't want to run, and it'll be very rich. So the goal here then is I need to get this one pulled apart. There's a brace here that holds the end of it, and we'll have to be very careful coming apart, because we got the throttle and governor connections there. And then we'll take it off here. The challenge is often with this heat shield on this muffler. The heat shield protects the carburetor, which is nice, but it kind of blocks that screw. And sometimes you can push the heat shield down and get the screw out, and sometimes you got to take these bolts out and remove the muffler. I'm not sure which one will work this time, but we'll start with this brace. We'll take a 5/16 to pop that one off. It isn't too hard. can get the screws to come loose with a screwdriver. Oh, yep, that one comes loose easy enough. Let's try the bottom one. And that one comes loose too. Alright. There's also a little breather hose on the back here that I was just able to pop off. And then, let's see if we can get these screws to come out without taking the muffler off. Kind of tricky, but I think I got it. There we go. Along those pliers. Catch that gas so it doesn't go on the floor. This old mower is actually this year, I think it's 40 years old. It's 40 years since I bought it. It's been amazingly good old running machine. Now the throttle's got a spring on it. And the spring goes through the hole. I don't want to mess that spring up. It's kind of come out of there. How do you do that? There it goes. Just didn't have the angle right. There we go. Alright, so that one's comes off the governor, or I'm sorry, yeah, comes off the governor, that's the throttle. And the other one is for the choke. And there's the carb. I'm just going to empty it into this bowl. Alright, the carburetor's had a chance to drain a little bit, and I've taken a little mineral spirits and wiped some of the crud off of it because it was pretty gross. Although some of this is paint. Over the years it's worn off, and it was originally painted black. So in any case, I have all parts to take it all apart and replace a lot of things and, well, say do an overhaul. But if it's just leaking, you know, there's a mixture screw at the top and there's a mixture screw on the bottom. So I can make adjustments if it's just off a little bit. So I'm just going to aim for the needle and seat first. And, so we'll take this one out of the bottom. I'm not going to disturb the adjustment on the screw. At least not yet. If something goes wrong and I have to, you know, go to I'll call it the starting point, I can do that. But if we take this loose, and this one ought to be, this should be the main jet based on where it's located. And I didn't buy a new, I don't have a new gasket. This is a metal gasket. So I'm going to try to keep that around the screw in its same location. And if it doesn't seal well, I may have to still get one of those. But the parts that I have are the, there we go. Let's see if I can get this off of here. There we go. There's the float bowl. The float is specified that it's supposed to sit level, and it's not sitting quite level. Now this one is not supposed to be as much fun as the Tecumseh carburetor was with its odd little spring. This one should be easier to get apart. Should just be able to pull the pin out, set that aside, and we'll lift this up, and then you've got the needle that sits on that tab, and it's facing, the open side is facing the inlet of the engine, away from the inlet of the carb. The book says, hey, install it with the open side toward the venturi. And the question is, when you're looking at the carburetor on the outside, where the heck is the venturi? And being that the throttle is over here, I think it's supposed to be that way, but in any case, it goes in that direction. We'll take the needle and spring out, and then dirt, just, I don't know, there's some like sediment from me flipping it upside down. But I don't see anything in the main jet. I'm going to leave that one alone. The seat is this little green thing down here in the bottom. And what I have is my Tecumseh tool for pulling out the seals. Briggs, at least in the book that I have, doesn't have their own tool. They tell you to take a little hook tool and pull that one out. So that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to just use the Tecumseh tool here. See if I can get it through there. Oh, there it goes. A little bit of a challenge, but got it out. Just looking at it, it doesn't look bad. I mean, you often can't tell just by looking. That's why you replace them. But I'm going to go get my fresh one out here and we'll take a look. Got the official kit from Briggs and Stratton. It's a 394-681 for this. I think they called this a large One Piece Flo Jet. And the kit comes with a spring, and it comes with two needles. One of the needles has a Viton tip and the other needle is aluminum. And it depends, the instructions tell you, whichever one you need is the one you should use. So the original one here has an aluminum tip. So this one's got an aluminum tip. And looking at it, it's got, it had some deposits on the tip, and the tip isn't especially smooth. So something has maybe damaged the aluminum, so we're going to take the spring off of it. See how this spring looks. Maybe I won't put the new spring in. It looks the same, so that's fine. I have a new spring. And then there's the old seat. And there's the new seat. I would just say that this old one, well, it's got a fair amount of wear on it. It's not in bad shape. And there's a new one. And they want you to put it in with a 5/32 tool, according to the instructions. And, our my Tecumseh, what is that, 670377, their standard carburetor tool, looks like it's going to work just fine for that. And on the bottom of these, there are ridges, and the ridges go down into the hole. They want it lubricated with some solvent. Get my mineral spirits back out here. There we go, get something on it so it'll slide a little easier. First it didn't want to slide, but I went down till it kind of clicked. And I think it's all the way in. That's good. I also have a new gasket for the float bowl. And these, some of them are, some brands are rubber, but this is really kind of like a fiber gasket. I kind of need to get in here and pick that one out. There we go. I might be able to reuse it, but that one's, I don't know. That one seems kind of fragile, so I've got new ones. New one. That's the new gasket. And it's kind of a, like I say, it's a fiber rather than rubber. So it doesn't like to reuse very easily. We can drop that in the groove. And then there's my nice new aluminum needle and a spring. Pop that spring on there, like so. There's the float. And we will hang the... Now, if we need to make an adjustment, the spring hangs on here, on this tab. And if we need to make an adjustment, we'll have to bend that tab one way or the other. But for the moment, we're going to hang the needle on there. Turn this guy upright. And drop it in the space, in the hole. Put the pin in, like so. Now the goal is that it should be the same height on this side as it is on this side. That's what they're asking for. And it does not appear to be, so I'm going to need to make an adjustment, and I need to get some tools here. Just a minute. Well, there's a couple ways you could do this. If you got like a steel ruler or something, you need to measure from the casting surface up to the top here, and it's rounded. So, you know, I've got like the straight edge of a clothespin, and I could measure from there. But I've also got my dial caliper, and it has a depth gauge function on it. So I think what I'm going to do, rather than using a straight edge, is see if I can get a measurement here off of the back side and lock it down. It's like 3/4 of an inch. So then, I'm going to turn this around, and I should be 3/4 of an inch on the front side, and I'm not. This one is much lower than the other one. So, I'm going to pull the pin out, and we're going to raise it. Bend the tab a little bit higher. You don't have to go very far. Just going to tweak it a little bit, like so. So we'll put that back on again with the open side and go in the right direction. Set that in there. Put in the pin. Still have a ways to go. So we'll try it again. This one's a lot different than the... I mean, that's not unusual that parts change and you have to change the settings until they come out. Alright, so we're going to lift that tab a little further. Ooh, that's just about perfect. It's just touching my dial. That height is 3/4 of an inch. And she's right there. And if I go to the back side, now I might have shifted it a little bit, so, and the whole goal is it's supposed to be level. So that it stay the same. It really should, because the pivot didn't move, but excellent. All right. When we got a new gasket on, we can set the float bowl back in place. I am going to just take a quick look down the main jet and make sure that there's nothing laying in there that I missed. I mean, it wouldn't account for it leaking. Okay. And the float bowl has no, it's completely round, so unlike the Tecumseh, it doesn't have a direction that it needs to go. It can go anywhere. Yeah, if I was thinking, I would have bought this steel or aluminum washer for the bottom of the float bowl too, but I forgot. So we'll try it. If it happens to leak here at the bottom, then that'll be a problem. I'll have to pull that down with my fingers without turning the screw. As long as the screw and the nut turn the same, you should end up with the same adjustment that you had before you started. We'll turn this guy until it stops, because the nut bottoms on that washer that bottoms on the float bowl, and then the inside of the float bowl bottoms on the on that post that you saw. So it all goes together as a solid assembly. And I mean, it's possible that I may need to tweak that mixture screw once it gets running. So now I need to hook up the throttle and the choke out here. And these are a little bit tricky. The choke goes in the rear one. You really don't want to bend the linkages if you can help it, so. And then the throttle has a spring that goes in it on this engine. I kind of want the linkage preloaded. So there's a spring that attaches at both ends. I guess just to take the slack out. Alright, so that's in there. And that's in there. There's a little tube on the back here. The breather goes in here. So I don't have a gasket that looks like this. That's got this extra, I'm going to call it kind of a heat or an air deflector on it. And the gasket itself's in pretty good shape, so I'm going to reuse it for now. And I mean, I could end up with a vacuum leak perhaps, but it's not going to leak fuel. If I need to replace it, I'll have to get one and come back and replace it. I hate to do things twice, but sometimes put the top bolt through it. And then got two or three things to do at once. That little breather's got to go on the back. Get this screw started. So I'll get the brace screw started, and I need to push down and get the heat shield out of the way. It's nice that they slotted these. Snug them down hard with the screwdriver here. Tighten up this brace. Get the clamp on it. I'm going to let that sit for a bit. Make sure it doesn't leak. And watch to see that it doesn't flood. I have gasoline in the oil from this thing leaking, and I'm going to change the oil before I try to start it. And so for right now, I'm going to let it sit and make sure that I don't have any leakage overnight. Looks like the throttle's working, choke is working. I'm going to come back in the morning and change the oil. The adjusting screw on the bottom is the main, the high-speed jet. And this one on the top is the low-speed jet. There is an idle speed adjustment, which I'm not going to mess with. They really don't, they want you to not set the idle speed too low on these engines because it has splash lubrication. And so I've never messed with that screw. It idles pretty fast, and that's the way they like it. So that's how you change the needle and seat and set the float in one of these Briggs and Stratton carburetors. The needles, the best way is set that idle needle with the throttle all the way down and adjust that top one, and then set the throttle all the way up to high speed and set the bottom one so it runs smoothly and powerfully. I was planning to show you how to do that, but I'm still having some other difficulties with this engine. I ran it for about an hour, not knowing that I had gasoline in the oil. And for some reason, the engine is low on compression, and I'm having trouble getting it to start. Don't know if I finally wore the rings down, or if I've got a valve that's not sealing, or whatever. But the compression is definitely lacking. So that's how you fix the carburetor. I'll have to go work on the mechanicals on the engine. Hey, maybe after 40 years of hard service, it's finally decided that that's all she wrote. So, hey, that's all for now.